On this episode of Africa's Big Switch, we had a conversation with Modupe. Modupe is an accomplished international development professional with a strong focus on strategy, good governance, gender and women's empowerment, and sustainability. With over 7 years of experience, she has excelled in advisory roles, program and stakeholder management, strategy development across Anglophone and Francophone West Africa, as well as in Switzerland. Her passion lies at the intersection of public, private, and non-profit sectors, particularly in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals through good governance, sustainable business practices, innovative technology. Currently, Modupe serves as the Education Advisor to the Minister of Basic and Senior Secondary Education at the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, where she specializes in digital learning initiatives. Join us as we delve into Modupe's inspiring journey. This is Africa's Big Switch. Hello and welcome to another episode of Africa's Big Switch. Today we'll be speaking to Modupe, and with me hosting today is Hassana. Hi Modupe, how you doing?
Hi, I'm well. How is everyone doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Um, for context, you're at the airport. You're taking this interview in the airport, so thank you. Thank you for doing this.
Nope, no
Um,
problem.
yeah. Okay, so let's get into it. Modupe, can you tell us just give us a quick background about yourself?
Hi, my name is Modupe. I currently work in consulting, but in a special part of consulting. So I like to say I work in public sector consulting, but I work for a firm that advises political leaders across the globe on strategy, policy, and delivery, of course, using technology. My background is in international development, really with a focus on Anglophone and Francophone West Africa. I've had background work in nonprofit management, in consulting for international organizations, and donor management. I like to say that I'm one of the few people who actually knew what they wanted to do from when they were very young, and I've kind of stuck with it. And let's see how far I go with it. But I'm excited to talk with you guys today.
Really cool background. Um, you said you knew what you wanted to do quite early on. What was that?
Um, I wanted to work in international development. I think when I first learned what the UN system is, which most people is the first like introduction to international development, I was just really interested in it and always just kind of learned about it, read up on it. So I remember going into undergrad, like all my classes were very much geared towards like international development. Like I just did everything along those lines and I've just kind of stuck with it. Sometimes I do think maybe I should have varied it a bit, but I always knew that I wanted to help really help with the development of the continent and specifically West Africa because I am West African. Not to say that the rest of Africa does not need to benefit from development, but I've kind of dedicated my career to helping development of Africa. And specifically, I think definitely helping our political leaders because I do think that that's where the trajectory and change can really happen for the continent as a whole. If we have good leadership who are willing to really put in the work and ensure that they're um, putting forward what their countries and what their people and citizens need, I think that could really change the trajectory of the continent as a whole.
I agree. And I think that brings me to my next question. So, can you tell us about a bit about your current role? Because I think I would really want to explore the education sector,
Mhm.
um, especially with your current role, which I think is really cool. So, can you tell us a bit about what your role is?
So my current role is that I work as an education advisor in the Ministry of basic and senior secondary education in Sierra Leone. And just an interesting fun fact is that before I started this, I I had an understanding of the education sector in Africa, but never really done a lot of like work in it. And I just kind of was thrown into this role, and it was to specifically help build out a a pilot program for digital education. So Sierra Leone is a very interesting place when it comes to education on the continent. Anyone who talks about education in Sierra Leone comes up because a few years ago, they really looked to reform their education sector, and they put into place some really key policies to ensure that this became a reality. And then 2 years, I think it was last year actually, they revamped their curriculum for senior secondary schools and came out with this really innovative curriculum. Like if you look at the curriculum, you're just like even people like students in like Scandinavia are not learning these topics. Like they're very innovative, like robotics, really forward thinking, right? And basically looking at subjects of the future. But of course, this came with quite a few challenges in the sense that um the teachers who were going to teach the students obviously were not trained on these topics. So one, there were not enough skilled teachers, and two, a lot of these subjects required specific textbooks, workbooks that were not available. So of course, technology is a way to really um, leapfrog all of these problems. So we're looking to support the ministry with some partners on how to deliver the curriculum to the students digitally, because that would be able to take out the lack of obviously workbooks, textbooks, and and will also give the teachers a way to kind of learn on the go of the innovative curriculum. So I was working with I'm working with Khan Academy and the ministry, and we've built out this curriculum and a digital curriculum, and it's in a pilot phase now that's being rolled out across 5 districts in Sierra Leone. And it's just been a very interesting learning experience.
That sounds super interesting. I kind of wish the curriculum I use in secondary school was actually more updated, but we thank God regardless. Um,
Baby steps,
yes.
I'm sure it's getting there.
Yeah. Let's hope so. But you said there was a need to revamp, but there's been a whole revamp of the education sector in Sierra Leone, especially basic and secondary education. I think my question is why? Like, what triggered this revamp? Like, what was wrong with the previous curriculum?
I mean, I think the previous curriculum was not, and this is how I see it, was not geared for jobs of the future. And I do know that that's how the government sees education. They see education as the means to really develop the country. If you have an educated base, anything is possible, right? So they obviously revamping the SS curriculum gives these students the opportunity to get access to jobs that they would not get or ordinarily. Not only access to jobs, but then also it just builds kind of an entrepreneurship spirit in students. It gives them the opportunities to think. It builds analytical skills, comprehensive skills, so that way we stop this kind of trajectory of having students who are just learning for exams and just passing exams and then not really being able to apply what they learn in everyday life. And also because the Sierra Leonean, if you look back maybe 10 years ago and you looked at the statistics of their education sector, they were rather poor, especially out of school students. Like there are not enough students going to school. As a result, the government created free quality education that has increased the amount of students who are students of school going age and even adult students as well who are now in the schooling system. So putting in all these policies is we're seeing huge advancements in the metrics. So the literacy rates are increasing, the numeracy rates are increasing. Also, Sierra Leone is one of the countries that really looking at technology to really improve their education sector. They are already talking about how AI can be generative AI can really be helping to improve education metrics, education outcomes. And it's really positioning itself as an exemplar within the region and actually maybe across Africa as well, if we think about it on the whole.
Love to hear it. Like every time I hear like this AI or anything technology related coming to Africa is like very encouraging. So I'd actually like you to expand more on that if you can. So if you can tell us a bit more about the changes that are now in place, like for example, maybe what was being done before and what is being done right now that is a lot better than what's being done before.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to just talk a bit more about the pilot I'm working on then. So for the pilot, obviously we're working on the pilots, then we're thinking to scale it. So for the pilot, we're looking at what subjects would be a good subjects to kind of put on this platform and digitally deliver it to the students. And obviously we picked math, and we picked math because math is one of those subjects that a lot of the students apparently were failing when they would take the what's it called? The WIAC exam, which is the West African Examination Council's exam for secondary schools. And so it was something that was interesting to me because I was thinking that math would be a subject that people would not feel because in my mind, math is something that you can just kind of really chew and pour. Like you learn the formulas and you can apply it to it, but obviously that was not the case. So we put this on the platform and we obviously train the teachers on how to teach the students. And then obviously we're using Khan Academy, and Khan Academy already uses technology. The part that we use was not the AI part, but I'll talk about that later. So the students have access to these courses online. There are videos that kind of teach them, go step by step, and make sure that the students are understanding of it. Because obviously, if you don't understand, and it goes further into explain further. Also, there's a whole section for teacher training tools for the teachers to also support the students. And this is something that did not happen beforehand. Beforehand, it was just students who would just have textbooks and then they would get through it, and that was just the end of it. But this just brings so much more interactiveness to the learning process for both the students and the teacher. And the pilot is about to end, so we're now obviously collecting data to get more about the learnings, but we can already see that it's the outcomes and the testings have improved. And it just goes to show that, technology is something that could really, it can be used as a support, like a supplementary aspect for teachers. It doesn't have to replace teachers, but teachers can also make use of this to ensure that the students they are teaching have a better understanding and are able to really grasp that knowledge that they need to move on to kind of the next step in their educational career. That's something that we're seeing that's very impressive. And I know for a fact that Khan Academy is also now coming out with, well, they already have it in the US, like it's available in the US, but it's going to be available for a number of English-speaking countries across the world. And that's, it's called Kanmingo. And Kanmingo is more for the teacher training tools, and that's being powered using AI. And so that it helps teachers create lesson plans. It helps teachers grading courses. And that's something that's going to be available for so many countries. And I know Sierra Leone is one of them. And this is something that I think would actually be a game changer for a lot of, let's say, lots of African countries. I know it's for English speaking right now. Lots of English speaking African countries who maybe teachers don't have access to physical lesson planning workbooks and tools. we have this at their fingertips, like through their phones or maybe their tablets. Or let's say if they're working in a school that has a computer lab, they have access to this. I mean, that being said, it's hard to talk about all of these improvements that are happening as a result of technology without acknowledging the challenges that come with them. Because in Sierra Leone, which is one of the poorest countries in West Africa and definitely one of the poorest in across the continent, obviously has there are three main issues that we are facing when we're trying to roll out such transformative changes, right? So a big one is power access, um, followed by internet access. I think they go hand in hand at this point. And then obviously access to the actual hardware. So that would be the means of which we are going to access the platform or whichever form of technology you're using. So that would be either a computer, a laptop, a phone, a tablet. So when we are talking about all of these amazing changes that technology can really power, I think it's very important for us to think about how we can really help fix the structural changes that exist and um, how these changes can come about. And I I mean, in my role, I think you just have to be very imaginative and just yeah, definitely be very imaginative in how you're problem solving for some of the issues, and also definitely thinking about how the issues can be solved long term, because we definitely see a lot of short term change, short term solutions. But I think that if we start thinking more long term solutions, it will definitely have much more of an impact, specifically in the education sector.
It's interesting how you brought in like the conversation about the challenges, because that's something I had in mind while you were speaking, in terms of like there will be that debate where sometimes some people lean more towards the traditional way of teaching, and then maybe others will now start favoring the AI inclusive like training methods. So in terms of that, so how do you convince, I think, how do you convince people that are more like that are leaning more towards the traditional way of teaching to adopt these tools? If you've done that, or how do you plan to do that?
I mean, I think, well, because I was working within the civilian like kind of domain, and they are very much interested in anything that has to do with technology, because they are looking they're very forward thinking and kind of finding the fast and most sustainable ways to deal with some developmental issues, right? But I do understand the traditional people who are definitely for let's just go the traditional route, which is fair. And it's also it's definitely understandable. And I always give the example of, for example, in education, not everybody has to be using AI to create lesson plans and everything. Sometimes we should just use low hanging fruit. We don't have to always go. We can just use very basic technology as well. I mean, I worked on a project a few years ago, and that was helping women understand digital financial literacy. And we used USSD codes for them to access the course. Like, so the course was everything on the phone. You didn't need a smartphone. You could just use any regular phone, as long as you could access. It had a screen enough for you to. You didn't even have to read. It also was voice over internet. So you just needed to be able to access the code, because that's where we knew that that's where the people, our audience was. And it's very important to also reach people where they are and not assume that everybody, just because AI is kind of what's in fashion, is trendy, is the buzzword right now, that's not going to solve every issue. It could solve some, definitely. And it's just a stepping stone for the future, because let's be honest, technology is, that's where the future is moving forward. So eventually everyone is going to have to be at that finish line. But some people, some parts of the education sector can be using AI, some parts can be using basic technology, some parts can be using USSD code, because just because of the realities of the on the ground. And I think that's something that a lot of people within the development sector understand. But it also comes down to what is shiny, what is new, where is the funding coming from, where do the funders want to fund? Of course, right now funders want to fund things that are being propelled by AI, being using high technology because that's what everyone seems to be moving towards. But there are a lot of people who need access to these educational tools, but they don't have the core tools. Like they don't have all the um three main things that we need to make sure that they have full access. And I think it's fair for those people not to be forgotten and for low technology and basic technology to also be in place. So as long as there are steps being put in place to make sure that those people have access and gain the necessary tools to get to the use of AI, I think that to be honest, I think it's fair because if we think that, oh, everybody has to use AI, then we get caught up in a lot of these issues where you would start a project somewhere and it's not sustainable because maybe during the project, the funding partner was paying for, I don't know, the fuel to run the generator of the digital lab that you are working in. And then after the project is done, there's no money to do that. So
Mhm.
it's very important to think about the sustainability of everything that's being done. And especially on the government side. And that's why I enjoy working with government because I think that part is very important to ensure that we have um, really robust policies in place um, and like really robust visions as well and a noted down way to ensure that these policies are implemented on the ground.
Incredible. So reaching people where they are, I really like it. I think quite often people tend to focus on the technology as opposed to the outcome. I
Mm,
think technology is a means to an end. It helps us to achieve things and to do things better, more efficiently, cheaper, and so on. And I agree with you. I think we need to really look at those who need access because everyone has a right to quality education. I think that's
yep.
SDG 4. So I completely agree, and I think you've made some really valuable points. You really touched on those three main structural issues. Power, I'm a big energy fan, so I go excited when you said that. Not excited about the challenge, but excited about the value of energy. The internet, I completely agree. You need to be connected to the internet in this day and age. And then you mentioned the hardware. A question for you, which I think you kind of touched on briefly, and you, from your experience in like delivering this pilot, how do you think that this can be scaled in terms of financing? Because when you said these things, I'm like, these are really good. But okay, let me ask. I guess it's a twofold question. So the first one is, how was this pilot financed? And I guess the second question would be, how can we make the financing of of this on a large scale more attractive?
I'm not sure I can answer the first one,
It's
but
okay. It's okay.
I
Second
don't think
one.
I can. But the second, I definitely think that this is something that I always. This is how I think about how people fund and get funding for international development projects in general. This is my opinion. Others people may not agree. I think that it's all about how sexy you make something. It's not about, oh my God, these people are in need, they're in
Agreed.
poverty. No, it's about how sexy you make. You need to make people interested. They want to know more about this. This is such an interesting topic. Like it's nice, it's shiny, it sounds appealing. And that's something that I think we can do for education. Because I mean, education is the future, right? If you don't have educated people, I don't know what we have. We don't have anything because that is literally the basis and we talk about how Africa is the future by 2060. half of the world is coming from, at least 1 in 4 people is coming from Africa, right? And our populations are booming. Our populations are booming. These people need to be educated. And it's something that all large scale donors should be thinking about, right? Because to ensure that the Africa that we see in the future actually manifests and becomes a reality, the population needs to be educated. The population needs to have access to good education so that we can actually become that Africa that we want to see. And I think the more we start using really good communication skills to tell the story of why people should be funding education, I think the quicker we're going to reach amazing educational outcomes. We're going to be metrics that are just going to be out of this world, especially on the African continent. And we've seen that there are some organizations, right, that are really doing amazing things within education. For example, one of our partners that we work with is called Rising Academy Networks. And they set up this model of, they set up schools in country and they work on the public school curriculum, right? So they're working on the government school curriculum. Yet the students that go to these schools are having amazing grades. They're passing all their WAEC, their DEC results are amazing. They're going to university. So it shows that the government model is not as broken as we think. It just needs maybe the way it's being modeled, and maybe it is being modeled on a larger scale because obviously there's not enough teachers, there's not enough workbooks. There are challenges, but these challenges can be solved, and they can be solved through if there's enough funding. And I really believe that we just need to make it sexy. Like, you have to be able to communicate this in a way that funders will be energized, excited to want to fund this. And not just obviously large scale funders as well, but even some medium-sized funders should also be interested in this. And there are people who are making difference, like Rising Academy is doing really well, and they work in Ghana, they work in Sierra Leone, they work in Liberia, they work in Rwanda. And if you look at their numbers, their educational outcomes, really, really impressive. It's educate. Well, actually at a good number of education non-profits and also educational technology startups across Africa that are doing amazing work. But obviously they don't have enough funding to make a large scale impact. But I definitely think it's all about the communication and the communication of the impact that's already occurred, right? It's not about what we're going to see for the future. It's about what has happened now and what the potential of scaling the now is. I think that's what we have to sell.
I agree. Making education sexy enough for people to invest. I think so. I tend to think in the more business perspective, and I think, and this is my opinion, I think that as soon as investing in education becomes profitable, a lot of the challenges would be fixed.
I do think education is profitable, right? So
Okay.
I just think it's the level of education that is profitable. That's where we are seeing the disconnect. So,
Okay.
for example, if you look, I'm Ghanaian. I know Ghana best, I would say. So I would use Ghana as example. The number of private tertiary institutions in Ghana is amazing. The internationalization of education is profitable. So private universities are profitable. You don't see secondary schools being as profitable. I'm not sure why that is, or why people have not invested in that, or why we're not seeing enough of them rise up. But we're seeing a lot of tertiary institutions rise up. I think that's a bit problematic because I believe that foundational learning, which is something that Ceridian also is investing heavily in, and that's really much a priority right now for the government. So foundational learning, which is like year 1 to year 4. So that's where children really develop like foundational core numeracy literacy skills. And that's where I feel like that needs some high level of privatization needs to go into there as well. Because that's the core. But if the foundation is not set properly, the rest of the schooling it becomes very problematic. Like you find a lot of students across West Africa, right, who get all the way to writing their BEC and can barely string 2 sentences together. And you wonder how did they get from every grade? Like how did you get from grade 1 to well, what year did they even write BEC in? Grade 9 or 8? Like so it's the privatization of universities. People are charging a lot of money creating universities across the continent. Um, but people are not investing that same amount of capital in secondary schools and in primary schools. Um, it's a very interesting concept to me. And there's a lot of movement of Africans across the continent for education. Um, we have an intern in my office right now, and I was speaking to her, and she's in university, and I was asking her, oh, university in Ghana, and I was asking her, oh, are there other Africans in her university? Because she's Sierra Leonean. So I was like, oh, so you came from Sierra Leone to Ghana to go to this university? And she was like, yeah, there's actually a lot of other Africans. And she was just mentioning the countries, and I was actually surprised. She's like, yeah, she has classmates from Ethiopia, from South Africa, from Nigeria, from Senegal, she said Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, Mali. Those I was surprised by because they're Francophone speaking countries. So I always find it shocking when I meet people from Francophone countries and Anglophone countries studying. So, and then she was like, she mentioned like people from Sudan, like Rwanda. I mean, she mentioned about 18 African countries. And that was so surprising to me. So, I mean, there's space and people are seeing that there's a need for this as well, but it's just not cascading into like the secondary and the primary level, which is I'm not sure where. I'm sure there's somebody has written a journal article on this somewhere
Mm-hmm.
to explain that. But I do think because it's
Mm-hmm.
private education is a big money maker on the continent, and it is because a lot of people are seeing that the government institutions, the government schools are not up to par. So people who can't afford it will spend money on educating their children in a private school.
Yeah, I agree. And just to butter your point, I actually met someone recently who studied in Ghana for uni, and she's from
Yeah.
Lesotho. Um,
Wow. Yes, Lesotho is
so
also one of the countries you mentioned.
yeah, so yes, I agree with you. And I know a lot of Ghanaians. I actually have a friend as well that studied in Ghana. He's Nigerian. So yeah, I agree with you. There's high demand, and it is profitable. I guess we just need to cascade that down to the primary and secondary level education.
Mm.
The final question for me before I hand over the mic to Hassana would be, what are you what are you kind of hopeful to see in the technology or education space in West Africa? Based on the projects you've worked on, based on your interaction, what do you think the future of education would look like in Sierra Leone, in Ghana?
Um, I think I think it's gonna have a different view. I think that education is not going to be limited to the classroom setting. Because I think the technology really democratizes a lot of spaces, and this would be one of them. Mobile phone penetration, for one, is something that has increased above and beyond than I think most people anticipated, especially within Africa. And I think a lot of children, or even the youth actually, are gaining more and more access to the use of mobile phones. And having that in your hand is enough to teach yourself anything. And a lot of these technologies that are coming out, a lot of these AI-powered ones, also, luckily, a lot of them are also being open source and so everyone can have access to them. And as a result, I think there are lots of the youth, upcoming youth, are going to really take their education into their hands. And on the same way, I do see that governments are looking to technology to help them achieve their developmental goals, to help them fix some of the challenges that they may have seen as insurmountable and just too difficult to even tackle. That these technological advances are ways to kind of bring more people into the education sector. And I would hope that the government actually makes use of these technologies because it would transform our populations, right? Imagine more kids being in school, more kids who if not having the access to a brick and mortar school, have access to an online school, a virtual school that they can learn all the things that they can and make use of those courses to better themselves. Maybe it could I'm hoping we'll see an increase in entrepreneurship. But people will be learning things on their own, will be interested in figuring out issues, interested in solving issues that affect them and their communities. And I really believe that technology is really going to be that defining factor moving on. Because as our populations do rise, it is going to get a bit harder for governments to deal with all the challenges that will come with increased population. Because more people mean more problems, honestly. So it's going to be a great way for governments to solve many issues, like killing so many birds with one stone, and also for students themselves to kind of take their education into their own hands. I spoke to somebody recently. We were talking about education. And I was talking about how kind of like YouTube, people always used to use YouTube to learn things. And obviously this person is maybe like 10 years younger than me. Wow. And they were telling me about how they've learned a lot of things, like they're in university going age, and they've learned like stuff they did not understand in school. They've learned through TikTok. Like there are people on TikTok teaching. And I just think that's amazing. Like this is technology just being used for so many things. And so many people are accessing TikTok who are not in school. Like they're not going to school, but they are spending time on TikTok. So imagine if this is a way that students who are not in school could actually also gain access to course curriculums, like things that could really better their lives. But yeah, I just personally think that education really is the future, and we need to be investing more in education, not just also in education technology, but just in the things that go with education, the infrastructure, the teachers as well, the physical handbook, because all of that is still important, no matter how much education can help. The foundations need to be also set in place.
That's great to hear, honestly. And as we're like, I guess getting towards the end, I want to take things a bit more personal. So do you have any like personal like success stories from your experiences or anyone else's that stood out to you that like kind of touched you? So that's one question. And then the other question would be like, do you have advice for people who are looking to get involved in the work you're doing?
Yeah. So I definitely have this I don't think I think I'm a very direct person. Direct, if direct is emotional, but not an emotional person. But when we're doing the pilot, so Sierra Leone became the 100th country that Starlink worked in. So Starlink, as part of their launch, donated a terminal to one of the schools I was in the pilot that I was running, like I'm working on. And so that school was already on the pilot. They already were using the platform, had internet access, but the internet access was obviously not as strong because the platform uses a lot of videos and it takes a while for them to load and all of that. And I remember the teacher, it was the computer teacher of the class, and it was also the math teacher, right? And they connected it to Starlink, and I'm watching him like see how fast the videos are literally downloading, and the students are just like, wow, like this is so much faster. They're engaging with the platform a lot quicker. And I'm just watching everyone's reaction in the back. And I just felt, and then I don't think I get like so like emotional about the work that I do, but it was just this sense of wow, like this actually made a drastic difference in the way these people are interacting with their education. And that moment, that feeling, I was just like, I wish I could feel this every single day. And I wish there were more instances to feel this way. So that was definitely one touching moment that like would definitely stick with me, and was definitely kind of that like reassuring push that you need, because the thing about working in international development is that I would say that it's very difficult. It's not as rewarding as everyone thinks it is. Sometimes a bit soul crushing. So that was a moment of just, oh, this is really great to see that it's the impact, like I'm seeing it in real life. That was a good moment and a good feeling. Any advice to people who are interested in working in international development? I definitely say go for it. I personally would very much love to see more Africans working in international development when it comes to African issues. Um, the international development space currently seems to be definitely filled with a lot of people who are coming from the Western world, which is not a bad thing. But I always think that it's the the impact goes further when it's impacting something or some place that you're coming from. So I think that more Africans need to enter the space and need to definitely see this as a place to work to help build the development of the continent, because if not you, then who? Nobody is going to care as much as you about your home. So if you are in that space and you are making the decision, you're the decision maker, you're the one who is reviewing the policy, you're the one ensuring that the implementation is going from ideation to implementation in the right way, you're making sure that you're putting the needs of the people who are on the receiving end at the utmost at the foremost of all projects. I think we will be seeing much more sustainable projects. We will be seeing projects with more impact. We will be seeing African countries um, that are developing quicker, because there will be much more Africans at the decision-making table. So I would definitely encourage as many um, Africans from across the continent to enter the international development space. And it's a very large space. It's very broad. It's not just, oh, policy. There's so many different sectors within international development. I mean, there's even research, there's policy making, there's donor management, there's partnerships, there's stakeholder management. There's just so many different facets that I want, and I think we need more Africans in international development.
No, 100%. I agree on that. Well, and I'm hoping that a few people listening will be encouraged and they'll be like, yes, don't get involved. But so we have like one final bonus question that we usually ask all our guests. and it's if you could travel to anywhere in Africa on an all-expense paid trip, where would it be and why?
Where would it be? Oh, it's I think, wow, that's a hard one. I've been to quite a number of African countries. Let's see. I think I would like to go, I think I'd like to go to Namibia.
Why? Why Namibia?
Why Namibia? Because I've read quite a bit about Namibia. I think the history is very interesting. And I also think it's very interesting how it's it's severely underpopulated and it's severely underpopulated, but there's so much happening in the country and I think it's not getting um enough attention. I think it's one of those countries that just fall under the wayside, but it's actually like a very amazing country destination wise, like tourism wise. Like I don't know why people are not moving to Namibia. There's so much space for more people. Like there's people can go there, and it's rather calm. It's peaceful. Don't really hear about it. It doesn't really have any problem. I think it'll be a nice place to like retire to in Africa.
I haven't even really heard much about like Namibia, like you mentioned. So maybe
Pardon?
I haven't heard much about Namibia, like you mentioned.
Yeah, yeah,
So
but
maybe
it's a really beautiful, it's a beautiful place.
yeah. Have you been, or is it like more like you've heard about it?
I want to go.
Oh, okay. Fingers crossed, hopefully very soon.
Yeah, maybe,
Yeah, you're not the
maybe,
first to
but
mention Namibia, to be honest. I
no,
think
Namibia.
they also have that desert and sea intersection thing
Yes,
that
exactly. The desert and sea intersection. There's so many things that happen there. There are like some
hmm
really cool like techno concerts that happen there in the middle of the desert. It's a very
hmm
interesting place.
Yeah, and I think the economy is actually good.
Yeah,
Like
it's
so
stable
yeah.
compared to others.
Yeah. Compared to some of us, some of our own countries.
Compared to others, it's stable, but yeah, it's a very cool country. Yeah, Africa is 54 countries. There's so many, and there's so much opportunity everywhere.
Like
Um,
100%.
so much opportunity.
I think we just need good PR and marketing. That's it.
I very much agree with that. As coming from a country that has benefited heavily from some great PR in the past like 5 to 6 years, I think it's possible for every country in Africa to do this.
No, 100%.
It's very possible because it is all about the PA. It's how you tell your story, right? It's not about what the story is or how other people view it. It's about how you project the story you want to tell, the narrative you want people to know of your country, and that's how it works. I mean, Ghana, to be very honest, it's amazing the narrative with Ghana that has happened in the past, like since like what 2018. Before that, I would like to know the number of people who were coming here on vacation and stuff like that. I already knew this as a destination, a place to party, or a place to come and learn about history. That was not the case. It was very numbers were very low, and as a result of like really good marketing, communication, like narrative storytelling at this bit, I would say, Ghana has become this place that everyone wants to visit. I'm yet like everywhere I go in Europe, America, everybody's like, oh, you're Ghanaian, like your friend came here, they want to come, like they're coming in December, they're coming in September, they're coming in summer, like it becomes a place, and simply because of how they told the story.
Thank you so much. It's been like really good to hear about like your experiences in this space.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on this.
Pleasure
Lovely
is mine.
chatting with you guys. All right, thanks. Lovely to meet you, Hasana.
Nice to meet you too.